Quick, name a winner. Any winner from the last 6 years of American Idol. Or The Voice? X Factor? Oh, what's that? You can't? Didn't think so. And for the 5% of you who are able to name one, no. But even you, the pop culture savant that you are, have to recognize that these talent shows are far, far from their peak in relevance that they had back in the 2000s and early 2010s. In fact, in that intro earlier, you probably didn't even realize that The X Factor, the original UK version, hadn't even aired new episodes in 8 years. The American version, even longer than that. Now, for some of you Zoomers, it's possible that you do hear about, The Voice whenever it's announced that a new pop icon will be a coach for one of their seasons. Heck, you may even have recently come across America's Got Talent clips on your For You page on Reelstagram or whatever. But getting views on Instashorts does not cultural relevance make. I mean, I could just waste time here showing you the numbers from then to now. How properties like The Voice or American Idol just fell off, going from 30 million views an episode on TV to barely scratching 4 or 5 million nowadays. But that wouldn't fully illustrate the extent of the drop-off. Chat, friends, children, I need you to realize the chokehold that these shows used to have on our society back in the 2000s. Like how on September 4, 2002, Kelly Clarkson narrowly beat Justin Guarini in the very first season of American Idol: The Search for a Superstar. It may be surprising for more jaded viewers today, but this was legitimately a great and heartwarming TV moment. A former cocktail waitress and background extra, a beautiful ingenue who, through sheer luck and talent and charisma and hard work week after week, finally accomplished her dream of becoming a musician, a signed recording artist. And she had half of America on her side. 23 million people watched that finale. And Kelly Clarkson, as you probably already know, was able to parlay that win into a long, successful career as a relevant mainstay in pop music, with classic pop rock bangers that everybody likes, and even a talk show where she still sang covers week after week, just like she did on Idol, but she's so good at it, who could complain? And more than that, her success paved the way for other artists who would go on to compete in these sort of talent programs and would even have decent to wild successes, having songs being listened to by millions around the world, winning Grammys and Oscars. I mean, two of the biggest Western pop bands in the 2010s actually came from X Factor. And even that doesn't capture the fandom that the show itself had, and the impact that it had on the television viewing public. I've met quite a number of people in my life who I would consider normies who had an encyclopedic knowledge of those first 7 or 8 seasons. It's been so mythologized, in fact, that there is even a book dedicated to this early Idol era. And I certainly didn't spend $30 American to buy this book 15 years ago because I was just that enamored with the show as a child. No siree. It was a good formula. But then as the 2010s just kind of limped along, it felt like these shows just sort of dropped off. And we stopped getting these kinds of stories or career arcs or trajectories like Kelly Clarkson's. I mean, the ratings dipped for one, and it's way less likely nowadays that American Idol or similar talent shows get discussed in office break rooms or at dinner tables or on playgrounds compared to 20 years ago. And for those of you who pay attention to pop music, it's way more likely that your next fave pop girl or pop boy will come from YouTube or Snaptagram or Instacock than they are to come from The Voice. Ugh. Now, you may be thinking, well, TV talent shows feel obsolete because TV itself is obsolete. And I mean, yeah, maybe. But it's not like TV ever completely went away. Even late into the 2020 streaming era, you still have huge shows like Squid Games or Wednesday having a wide-reaching impact.
Are you all ready?
Also, in my own social media algorithmic bubble, I've heard way more buzz about Mr. Beast and his Beast Games than I have for any singing competition on TV in the 2020s. If those shows could make a splash in a way that The Voice or Idol or Got Talents could not, I think that there's something there that I want to dig into. Lastly, I do want to point out that I am approaching this from a fairly Western, mostly US-based perspective on talent shows. Like, I am not at all familiar with Eurovision and the crazy things that that continent is up to. I haven't kept up with newer formats like Dream Academy in Korea. I hear survival-style idol shows like those are a major part of the K-pop ecosystem. But even with this limited scope of this video, all these shows once had a gigantic cultural impact on the entire world, as evidenced by the fact that every show I'll be talking about here, Popstars, Idol, X Factor, Got Talent, The Voice, all of them have had like 50 plus versions each, franchised around the world in so many countries, nearly every continent even. And some of those pop acts, artists, and bands who spun off from these more localized versions of these shows would become huge names and even some of the biggest stars in their own home countries. And so, without further ado, let's find out what happened. The television talent show where audiences at home had a hand in choosing the best and most talented contestant to be blessed with a life of fame and riches. That has a surprisingly long tradition, beginning with the original Amateur Hour in the 1950s and 60s and Star Search in the 1980s. Now, both of these shows were nationwide phenomena during their time, and it's where a lot of big names got their start. By the 90s, the talent show format was due for a resurgence, with the reality TV boom of that decade, and especially the rise of the format franchise model. If you saw a foreign TV show whose format or structure or gimmick you liked, you could just buy the rights to franchise said show, and then produce that show to be aired in your own country. Like, Big Brother was originally a show from the Netherlands. The first season of Survivor to be broadcast on TV was from Sweden and called Expedition Robinson. And in a little country off the coast of Australia called New Zealand, you may have heard of it, there was a show in 1999 that could be considered patient zero of talent show mania, called Popstars. This was a show about the making of a pop superstar band, a real music industry showing how the sausage gets made moment, showcasing the end-to-end process from having open auditions for regular, everyday people to see who would be good enough to join the band, peeking into the grueling hours of training and practice, recording music, shooting music videos, performing live, all of that good stuff. Producer Nigel Lithgow saw that show and, staying true to his own British heritage, took something from another nation and brought it over to ye olde England. This was the start of Popstars, the British edition, which really did keep the spirit of the New Zealand version alive, showing everything from the open auditions, to the formation of the band, to the training, the recording process, the drama. It showcased the artificiality of the publicity and marketing machine that record labels use, something that the music industry generally tries to keep hidden, culminating in an episode where the band discovers that they were able to hit #1 in the UK charts. Some observers at the time felt that by exposing all these industry shenanigans, showing the assembly line precision of the pop machine could end the era of manufactured pop acts. But that really wasn't the case. In fact, the band that came about from this show, Hearsay, became a legitimate pop sensation in Britain for about 10 to 15 minutes. Yeah, they broke up not even 2 years after the band was formed. For as much fanfare as they got, the show did not set these kids up for success. When discussing the original New Zealand show, critic John Casimir pointed out, Popstars was a program with built-in cultural obsolescence. It was only ever going to sustain the act as long as it was on air. The whole concept was to follow the creation of something, to package and sell us the hopes, dreams, and hard work of a handful of young women on their way to the top. Pop success was, and is, the end of that equation, not the beginning. Once they achieved it, the game was over. Remember that quote, it will be quite relevant later. But the show itself was big. Millions of Brits tuned in to watch the story, the allure, the glamour. And the center of it all, the story of these crazy kids that you were rooting for and that you wanted to see succeed. And thus, the show Popstars would begin a long imperial era of talent shows ruling the UK throughout the 2000s, providing Brits with hours of entertainment and giving them a brief respite from the existential dread of living in that dreary swampland of a country from which Piers Morgan arose from its murky depths. Horrifying. Speaking of regrettable British reality stars, then unknown music executive Simon Cowell was approached to be a judge on Popstars, but he turned it down. And if you're watching this video, you already know Simon Cowell has his grubby little fingerprints all over every talent show discussed in this video. Just all the shows. All of them. So with the show Popstars being a big hit, this inspired one man, a man named Simon Fuller. He liked the idea of having these open auditions to look for the next big thing. And instead of trying to put together a band, he wanted to find the next big solo superstar. An idol, you could say. And what primarily differentiated it from Popstars was audience involvement. Quoting him, the theory: if the public could choose the talent, it would be a self-fulfilling prophecy, and the singer would be successful. The mechanism used was a recurring weekly showdown where we would end up with the best talent that already had a built-in audience and wouldn't be so dependent on radio. I think that passage betrays his own views on popular music as a commodity, as a brand, more than art or an expression of oneself. Which is quite antithetical to how a number of people, especially music nerds, view pop music. I mean, just music as a whole. So equipped with this idea, Simon Fuller started Pop Idol in Britain, with its first episode airing on October 6, 2001. It has a format that is extremely familiar to anybody who's even walked past the television set in the 2000s. Pop Idol began with open auditions around the UK, where hopeful singers performed in front of a panel of judges. What would be shown on TV would be the really good contestants, as well as the,
We're no strangers to love. You know the rules, and so do I.
To point and laugh at. The judges then narrow the field down to 50 contestants, the last point at which the judges had full control over who advanced.
As for our judges, they'll be taking a backseat now and handing over all of the hard work to you at home. They'll be in the background, but from now on it's up to you. You vote, you decide.
Viewers would then vote by phone or online to get their faves into the top 10, with finalists performing live each week, and each contestant being eliminated one at a time. Even with the judges' minimal control, one judge stole the show, becoming the subject of much discourse and controversy. Someone whose direct and dry style ran up against... It's Simon Cowell. You already know who he is. Simon, who initially blew his shot becoming a judge on Popstars, was an A&R record executive who was responsible for 25 million records sold at the time. And these prestigious, critically acclaimed musical acts are still beloved and remembered to this day, like Teletubbies, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the boy band Five, and Westlife. Simon Cowell, like Simon Fuller, wasn't exactly a guy looking to make high art, but he was taken in as a judge for Pop Idol, where he brought his trademark wit and brutal honesty.
When I decided to be the chairman of the judges, it was with the understanding that I would be totally honest. And that means having to tell an awful lot of people you're not very good.
You are totally and utterly lifeless.
But it wasn't just the judges. See, just like Popstars, you, the viewer, got to know these contestants. You saw how they got on in their audition, their performances week after week.
Everything I do it for you.
There was a lot of emphasis on interactions between contestants and the hosts, contestants and the judges. Like, you felt like you got to know these people. And not just that, you got to vote for your favorite who would then move on to the next week, and then the next week. So it was likely the personability and affability of these contestants, the audience interaction, or just the need to choose a favorite and fight for them. This made Pop Idol an even bigger hit than Popstars. Episodes were watched by over 10 million Brits, which is like 15% of the population of the UK. There must be at least 100 healthy teeth in that lot. I don't know why I'm being so mean to the British in this video. I'm just jealous of their healthcare. And so, with over 8 million votes cast, Will Young became the first ever Idol winner in the entire world. But both first runner-up Gareth Gates and Will Young benefited. Both would briefly become two of the biggest pop stars in Britain, dominating the British single charts for months at a time. Showing that even if you lost, you still won, in a sense. And so, encouraged by this success, Simon Fuller and co. were looking to bring this concept to America in 2001. It was surprisingly difficult to get any American network on board. It was only after Pop Idol really took off in the UK that they had some leverage. And according to Fuller, most TV networks weren't fans of the whole mass audition thing, which does feel like a logistical nightmare. And the whole audience involvement thing, calling in or texting in to vote, that was still kind of an unproven formula. But ultimately, they got Fox to bite, and so American Idol, The Search for a Superstar, finally premiered on June 11, 2002. And what can I say about American Idol that hasn't already been said a billion times? Just like UK's Pop Idol, the judges on camera supposedly decide who gets to proceed to the next round. The judges also had a hand in Idol becoming as interesting and watchable as it did. Something that gave American Idol a distinct and identifiable brand, a flavor that would last several seasons. Music industry veteran Randy Jackson, former pop singer Paula Abdul, and Simon Cowell. Just Simon Cowell. But of course, at the end of the day, everything that made the UK version work was also there in the US version. Ultimately, this was about the contestants. The contestants and how they got along with each other, with the judges, with the hosts, getting to know them, their whole vibe and personality.
Are you nervous at all when you're up there?
Not really. I mean, we rehearse enough, so no, not really.
We should stand with you then. I feel awkward.
I just don't want to be like, flash the world.
I'm gonna sit. I'm tired.
And especially their performances. The charm of getting to witness these hopeful, wide-eyed teens and young adults showcase their admittedly impressive singing talents to the world. And then getting to vote for your favorite, until one person gets crowned the winner. And I think that really resonated, because the real underlying message being conveyed through all this is you could also be the next American Idol. If you have the talent, aka are worthy in life, then you too can have all your dreams of fame and wealth come true. Wow! And like I already alluded to, this show became a cultural phenomenon. What strikes me is just how consistently successful Idol was. For like 5 straight seasons, it was a ratings juggernaut, often being either the most watched or second most watched show in a given week. Again, 30 million TV watchers regularly tuned in. And it also just dominated the conversation too. I remember a lot of those late night talk show hosts and stand-up comedians made this week's episode on Idol a part of their act in a bid to be topical. I would see those entertainment news shows back in the day report on who got eliminated on last night's Idol and what the judges said in between news about Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. And Idol was lucrative in other ways too. Through brand deals, record albums, tours, Idol earned a lot of money. But of course, at the center of all this were the contestants. I already mentioned Kelly Clarkson and her inaugural win in season 1, which, kickstarted this whole thing. And her coronation song, A Moment Like This, shot straight up to number 1 on the Billboard charts and became the best-selling single of that year. In fact, if you take a look at every winner for those first 5 seasons or so, Season 2's Ruben Studdard, Season 3's Fantasia Barrino, Season 4's Carrie Underwood, and Season 5's Taylor Hicks, every single one of those winners' victory songs after Idol would chart number 1 or 2 on the US Billboard Hot 100, which makes sense. If you spend that much time supporting your fave week after week and getting to know them as a person, you are going to buy their single. Multiply that by millions of people, and you have one of the most popular songs of the country for like a week or two. And it wasn't just the winners who benefited. Second placer Clay Aiken, fourth placer Chris Daughtry, and seventh placer Jennifer Hudson all saw considerable success after their eliminations on the show. It was clear that Idol was setting these kids up for success in the short term. But what about the long term? Well, we'll see. Because as with anything with this much cultural sway, there were people who were very critical and mean. Cracks were starting to show. For one, a number of folks criticized American Idol for conveying this illusion of overnight fame within the music industry, that all aspiring singers needed to do was to just show up, sing a little karaoke for a couple of months, and then they would become superstars? How? Established artists like Usher, LeAnn Rimes, even Elton John, all felt that the process of Idol didn't allow contestants to pay their dues by playing at small clubs, or that Idol took away the heart and artistry of making music. Just to say, these takes did not age well in the age of influencer music, but moving on. Speaking of singers not paying their dues, the whole idea being conveyed through American Idol was that showbiz was a meritocracy, that you would only survive to the next round if you were the coolest, bestest singer with the most talentedest voices. And yet, the audience only gets to vote after the top 32 had already been chosen by the judges and the producers. And so that would potentially allow for a lot of wiggle room for contestants who are not necessarily the most talented or deserving to get a spot in the live shows in the final 32. Basically, what I'm getting at is that there was no shortage of news, of speculation, and rumors, and allegations, and accusations of Idol producers, let's say, pushing forward contestants who may have been more marketable, maybe have a better backstory, maybe had previous experience in the music industry, and therefore maybe be better equipped to handle the idol machine, or even outright claims that vote totals themselves couldn't possibly be legitimate. I do need to emphasize that this is all alleged, but you know what I mean. But perhaps the worst thing you could say about American Idol during this time was that it was getting stale, with entire seasons following the same arcs and hitting the same beats. Those initial auditions, for example, had the quote-unquote bad singers who were often shown as clueless or arrogant so that the audience would have something to point and laugh at.
You remind me, yes, you remind me of so sweet.
And Paula Abdul ain't got on me. So, it doesn't even matter because I still gonna make it.
Yeah, Idol auditions were very mean, even over the top in their cruelty. And the presence of a Simon Cowell type didn't really help things.
You look like one of those creatures that live in the jungle with those massive eyes. What are they called? Bush baby.
You are sick.
I mean, just look at the number of Idol auditions that got on cringe compilations on YouTube. And all of that directly contrasts with the saccharine and overly polished, tightly controlled vibe of the live shows. The whole vibe was relentlessly chipper and positive, with a lot of focus on things like hobnobbing with celebrity guests, or all of Idol's charitable efforts. And these ridiculous group numbers with the matching outfits, like, what is this? Okay, fine, this one's a little endearing. You got me, American Idol. Idol undoubtedly had remarkably talented singers in their early years, but after 5 or 6 seasons of this, the formula was getting old. In fact, the audience began directly registering their boredom in a moment in season 6 when one of the supposedly worst contestants was kept on through the audience voting mechanism, through a concerted and highly publicized trolling effort. I made a whole video about that fiasco. But with all that, with Idol only ever getting bigger in size and scope, becoming more bloated and crammed with advertisements and brand deals, turning up the pomp and pageantry all the way up to 11, Idol was still a cultural juggernaut throughout the 2000s. Even its off-seasons still racked up many millions of viewers. And with that level of success came copycats. A lot of copycats. Pretty much as soon as American Idol started wrapping up its blockbuster first season, TV studios started airing their own singing talent shows. For instance, there was the show Fame on NBC, or Nashville Star on USA Network. Even Star Search began a brief reboot in 2003 in the wake of Idol's success. But the biggest of these imitators actually came from inside the house. Story goes that Simon Cowell, as the then judge of UK's Pop Idol, was reportedly unsatisfied with the level of control that he had as a judge over the results of the program and over the careers of the winners and contestants. Yeah, that tracks. Everything I've read about this man makes him out to be just some Svengali control freak. It was through this dissatisfaction that Simon conceptualized The X Factor, a hot new singing talent show. And you could probably tell just from the name that the show puts into sharper focus this idea that they're trying to find the next superstar. Beyond just the voice, right? You had to have that star power, that moxie, that it girl aura, that je ne sais quoi. Structurally, X Factor also had several differences from the original Idol format. For one, it had separate distinct categories, like separate lanes, for different kinds of musical acts. Like one season could have categories like male, female, people over 25, groups, the four genders. But the real thing that made X Factor stand out at the time was the involvement and the expanded role of the judges. Again, I must remind you, Simon Cowell, massive control freak. He helped build the X Factor around a gimmick, turning judges into competing team captains. He engineered what was called the boot camp, where each judge would be assigned a category of performers. Boys, girls, groups, etc. Then came the famous Judges' Houses round, where contestants would fly off to luxurious mansions and villas, so that judges could really take them under their wing, show them the ropes. And then, when the live shows began, the competition became just as much a judge v. judge competition as much as it was a contestant v. contestant show. This is something we would definitely see in future talent shows for sure, but we'll get there when we get there. Now, while Simon likely put this mechanic in so that he, as the X Factor judge, again could have more control, centering the program around the contestants' growth through the eyes of a single judge and their interactions together, it gave X Factor an emotional heft, a linchpin to build the contestants' journey around. And I guess it made for pretty good TV too, with up to 12 million watching in Britain. But with all that said, if you were only ever vaguely familiar with this whole genre of TV, you'd be forgiven for thinking that the X Factor was basically exactly the same as American Idol. In fact, somebody who did think that they were the exact same show was Pop Idol founder Simon Fuller. Yeah, this led to a whole bitter beef between Simon Cowell and Simon Fuller, where Fuller accused X Factor of having, quote, 35 visible similarities. But the two would eventually reach an agreement, where Cowell continued running X Factor in the UK, but would have to wait 5 years before bringing that format over to the US. But even the UK version of X Factor produced some pop acts who had some immediate star power, and/or hit songs that crossed over to the States. For instance, Leona Lewis was a huge star in 2007. Her song Bleeding Love was inescapable at the time. You may have heard Want You Back by Cher Lloyd in 2012. You popheads seem to really love Little Mix, who admirably maintained a loyal fan base while sticking to a consistent lineup for nearly a decade. But of course, the biggest pop act to come from UK X Factor, or any version of X Factor really, 5 young teen boys separately flocked to X Factor with hopes to become the next big thing. The show then merged them together to form a vocal group, where they were then mentored by X Factor judge Simon Cowell, who helped oversee their branding and public image. While the band would go on to only finish in 3rd place, a breakthrough project combined with a sudden rabid fan base of teen girls launched them to superstardom, becoming undoubtedly the biggest pop boy band of the 2010s decade. And even after the band took a hiatus, some of its members would eventually make it as solo artists in the late 2010s. You may have heard of them. And that was just in the UK. For the US installment of The X Factor a few years later, the 2nd season specifically, you would get another big success story. 5 young teen girls separately flocked to X Factor with hopes of becoming the next big thing. The show then merged them together to form a vocal group, where they were then mentored by X Factor judge Simon Cowell, who helped oversee their branding and public image. While the band would go on to only finish in 3rd place, a breakthrough project combined with a sudden rabid fanbase of teen girls launched them to superstardom, becoming undoubtedly the biggest pop girl group of the 2010s decade. And even after the band took a hiatus, some of its members would eventually make it as solo artists in the late 2010s. Now you would think with the gigantic mainstream success of One Direction and Fifth Harmony, this would indicate a long, prosperous era for the X Factor, but that wasn't exactly the case. For one, we didn't see a huge rush of copycat boy bands or girl groups in the 2010s, not in the same way that the 90s had Backstreet Boy clones running all over the place. 1D and Fifth Harmony feel like anomalies in the pop music landscape of its era, because at the time, who even cared about Western pop groups? But more importantly, unlike a Kelly Clarkson or Taylor Hicks, who cultivated their fanbase through American Idol first, the whole X Factor journey undergone by the members of One Direction and Fifth Harmony, it feels inessential to their appeal. You look at the core fans of these bands, and they were primarily directioners, or they were primarily harmonizers, and not necessarily die-hard fans of the X Factor program. And you know that this is true because of the fact that in the seasons that these bands competed, none of the other acts or other contestants, or even the goddamn winners of those seasons, actually came close to the mainstream success experienced by 1D and Fifth Harmony. Like, have you ever heard of Matt Cradle or Tate Stevens? Still though, you could not deny the prestige that came with the Idol and X Factor brands. And so it's time to talk about one truly huge talent show to be aired on TV in nations across the world. And of course, it begins with Simon Cowell. What did I say? What did I say? Simon Cowell, he's everywhere. He's in our walls. Simon Cowell was feeling nostalgic over the British talent variety shows of his childhood in the 60s and 70s, like Opportunity Knocks and New Faces. Instead of glamorous singing contests, he was craving something a little more insane, a little more wackadoo, like dance troupes or goofy physical comedians, or even talking singing animals. And so he started Britain's Got Talent. This all paid off. Britain's Got Talent was a massive success. Like, for one, this image of these high-profile judges in this long table with the X's and the golden buzzer, that's lodged itself firmly in the cultural zeitgeist. And through the years, and throughout the various iterations of the show around the world, we'd be treated to a true variety of talents. Pretty much everything you can think of, like dancers, dancing troupes, comedians, magicians, jugglers, stuntmen, acrobats, sand artists, beatboxers, ventriloquists, shadow performers, and a bunch of crazy animals.
You don't want to speak anymore?
No.
Okay. And now?
Oh, yes, I want.
Oh, and of course, there were the singers. A lot of singers. So many singers. I've spoken to people who've auditioned and lined up in these Got Talent cattle calls that take place in like stadiums or whatever, and they estimate that over half of the people who show up to these auditions are vocalists of some kind. One criticism I've heard levied against the Got Talent formula in execution is, why are there so many singers? For one, there's already an abundance of these singing shows they could have joined, like Idol or X Factor, and to be frank, among the many talents someone can showcase in a competition, singing is like the least impressive? Maybe impressive is the wrong word, but it's not unique. Like, how many people will you be able to see swallowing giant knives? That's intriguing, that's shocking, something you would never find in your local town talent hoedown. But singing, sure. I mean, everybody can sing to an extent. And I actually think that because of the fact that everybody can sing, it somehow makes it more relatable, somehow more resonant to a normie audience. And because of Got Talent's more flexible format, this allowed for a wider variety of vocalists. On X Factor or Idol, you almost never got people who sang Broadway, or jazz, or opera-adjacent singers, or even Mongolian throat singing. In fact, one of the first ever Got Talent participants to get really big sang opera. Meet Paul Potts, a humble, working-class mobile phone salesman from Bristol who was relentlessly bullied as a kid.
I don't really know why people bullied me. I was always a little bit different. So I think that's the reason sometimes that I struggle with self-confidence.
In the first season of Britain's Got Talent, he unassumingly steps onto the stage and wows the audience and brings the judges to tears with his rousing rendition of Nessun Dorma. Now, the story of Paul Potts, this insecure young man with the voice of Pavarotti, moved millions. And I do mean literal millions, because suddenly the reach of these shows, clips, and auditions was no longer constrained to television. A YouTube video of this performance was uploaded on June 10, 2007, and it blew the fuck up, sitting right now at 200 million views. I want to point out here that this may not be impressive for a 2020s TikTok audience, but this was back in 2007. Smartphones were barely a thing back then. People had to watch this on the computer. But if we're talking about this general genre of viral video from around this time, Paul Potts isn't even the one that immediately comes to mind. On April 11, 2009, a Britain's Got Talent audition featured a feisty, middle-aged woman from a small town in Scotland, and her name was Susan Boyle.
And that's just one side of me.
To be completely frank, I hate how this audition is portrayed. Everything about the framing and editing choices in this clip is just setting her up for failure. Like, listen to this jaunty doo-doo-doo-doo-doo music in the beginning. But then, the music starts, and she opens her mouth and stuns the crowd with a truly rousing rendition of I Dreamed a Dream from Les Mis. By the end, everybody is clapping and cheering and on their feet, and wow, it's so inspirational. It is a great performance, and despite the show being so weird about it, Susan Boyle truly is an inspiring figure. I can't lie when I say I've listened to that rendition like a dozen or so times just to, unironically jam to it. But whatever YouTube views Paul Potts received, it was surpassed by Susan Boyle, whose audition video received a whopping 264 million views on YouTube as of now, even becoming the most viewed video on YouTube in 2009. Now, to their credit, both Paul Potts and Susan Boyle would go on to have thriving careers, at least in the adult contemporary pop opera Broadway lane, the Josh Groban crowd. But their audition videos loom large, not just on their careers, but on how talent shows operate. Let's break this down. For one, it illustrated the power of positivity. You look at how many times American Idol and even the X Factor spotlighted bad or delusional contestants with bad attitudes who would have never gotten a chance in singing at the live shows anyway. Even if those bad, tone-deaf contestants were fun to mock and laugh at for a few minutes, these aren't feelings that you'd want to endorse or stay with for any amount of time. To put it another way, Devin from math class might feel a little weird sharing Delusional Cringe Idol Contestants compilation number 52 on his Facebook timeline MySpace wall. But the positivity and the inspirational story conveyed in the Paul Potts and Susan Boyle auditions, well, everybody and their grandmother, especially their grandmother, shared that link around. Look, Sonny, take a gander at this portly young man. Oh, such a beautiful voice. Oh, the ladies at the Bridge Cup will love this. Now about that Obama fellow. It has this BuzzFeed-ish quality of just dying to be shared, and that really helped with views. Another thing is the framing. The story of an unlikely underdog who beat the odds to showcase their beautiful gift to the world. This, in my opinion, exemplified and solidified this talent show trope of the sad, depressing experiences in a contestant's life that led them to this point, which could also be a source of sympathy, or what would be very cynically called the sob story. So this whole aspect of TV talent shows could be charitably seen as an honest expression of a contestant's inner life, as a source of inspiration and hope, knowing that other people are in similar situations, maybe. But the more pessimistic and way more accepted reading of these moments is as a cheap marketing ploy, exploiting those who have undergone tragedies in order to short-circuit audiences' emotions to make them feel something. So, you already probably know what a sob story entails, right? I was bullied at school when I was a kid. My wife has a life-threatening disease. I'm poor and all I own is a cardboard box. My box has a life-threatening disease. All I own is a cardboard wife. And it is not just me who noticed this. There are plenty of memes and jokes about how these sad sacks get heavily pushed in these kinds of shows.
I am poor.
The Got Talent franchise certainly wasn't the first show to utilize this technique, but coming into the 2010s, I did notice a lot less of these TV shows focusing on mocking bad and shitty contestants and focus on, young, sad children who sang and then got the golden buzzer. And I'm not even saying that these kids were untalented or undeserving, but it did represent a noticeable shift in tone. And to this day, the Got Talent clips and videos I see shared on Facebook are those inspirational stories of overcoming adversity. But I think the one lasting impact of the Paul Potts and Susan Boyle YouTube videos are that they are YouTube videos. In a 3 to 4 minute span, you get what they're about. They are these little isolated, self-contained stories with a beginning, middle, and end. Compare that with Kelly Clarkson's win in American Idol Season 1. The reason that moment is so powerful is because the win is a culmination of several episodes getting to know Kelly Clarkson, who she was as a person, as an artist, as a vocalist, and watching her performances, seeing her grow week after week. It's both obvious and not so obvious to say that these TV talent show formats were meant to be consumed as a season of television. But now, with this new short-form way of consuming content, you could get the same full experience in just 3 to 5 minutes. I mean, these talent show auditions that go viral, and it's pretty much always the auditions too, they already follow a complete arc. Poor, sad person was poor and sad, performs in front of the crowd and wows judges. Judges grant them the golden thing, and then their life is now good and fixed and happy. It's the YouTubeification of the TV talent show format. It's the TikTokification. It's the Mr. Beastification. So, I was going to end my discussion about the Got Talent franchise here, but there was just one tiny detail I couldn't stop thinking about, just too insane for me to leave out in this video. As I've alluded to, these Got Talent clips are still massive hitters in terms of views to this day, even on long-form YouTube. And it's kind of easy to see why. In this late-stage capitalist dystopian hellscape we live in now... Wow, a video essay mentioning capitalism? Groundbreaking. In this particular hellscape that we're living in, there is a comfort that comes with watching these talent show clips, knowing that the dream of rising up from poverty and succeeding in life is just so close to attain, that life and the music industry and showbiz rewards individuals who are just that talented and amazing and deserving and have been through so much, and you could be that person too. In fact, you may remember this theme from one of the very first episodes of Black Mirror, that show all about the techno-capitalist hellscape we inhabit. And I have to say that living in the Philippines, in developing countries, this talent show format, especially the rags to riches narrative, hits especially hard. And Simon Cowell, whose reputation went from slimy, acerbic Brit who loves tearing people down.
The problem I have is that you don't look like an American Idol. Do not believe that if Aretha Franklin entered this competition, she would win it now.
He's since adopted a more noticeably softer, smilier persona, more openly emotional, quicker to give praise and consideration. And I just think that that's a natural progression of audiences' tastes and expectations. Casual cruelty and callousness is out. Inspiration and positive stories are in. And I think that people kind of caught on that if you simply put Simon Cowell's face in a thumbnail and imply some sort of rags to riches story through the title, you're going to get views. A lot of views. So anyway, that's how we end up with this.
Oh, my soul, worship his holy name. Sing like never before.
So I regret to inform you all that there is straight up a cottage industry of manufacturing fake talent show slop, primarily enabled by green screen,
Whenever you're for me.
or AI, because Lord knows humanity has only benefited from AI in the last 5 years. All interspersed with potentially AI-generated footage of the judges and the audience members acting all shook and amazed and impressed. I can't stop watching this garbage. I mean, you can have your Fruit Love Island or whatever. This is my slop of choice. Look at them. They're all so sad. And also, these videos have some of the worst and most shameless clickbait since Leafy is here. All likely with the intent of bamboozling religious Facebook boomers into thinking that they're going to watch inspiring real-life stories. Look, Sonny! Look at this elephant playing the drums! My, how quaint! Now, what's this about a black president I hear? But you know what? All of this just goes to show the absolute farce that these shows have become now at this point in time. This is beyond satire, when people from all around the world see this as basically interchangeable with the real thing. Like, God, no wonder this type of show is dead and gone. But we are not yet done. We still have one more show to get to. And this is the last show I'll talk about in detail, but it's probably the one that most young people now are familiar with. Let's set the stage. It's 2011. With the 10th season of American Idol about to air, by that point, Idol was starting to feel a lot less big in the culture. It was getting way more stale than it had ever been. And over the years, the judges, coming from the original iconic trio of several seasons, Simon, Paula, and Randy, had seen a number of shakeups. Certain judges would come and go, but the biggest change in the lineup would be in 2011, when pop singer Jennifer Lopez and rock star Steven Tyler were brought in as Idol judges. Now, Zoomers probably do not understand, but at the time, this was really weird. Singers were never really the majority in a judges panel, until they got on J-Lo and Steven Tyler, now comprising 2/3 of the judging panel. And just a few years later, Randy Jackson would leave the show, being replaced by Harry Connick Jr., another singer. And ever since then, every single one of the judges that they got for American Idol have been musician, singer, celebrities. All of them. It's hard to definitively say why exactly, so this is just conjecture. But if you look at previous judges like Simon or Randy, they were accomplished music executives who were virtually unknown to the general public before Idol, and it took several episodes for their reputations or persona to be cemented in the minds of viewers. Whereas someone who's already well known to the public, like Jennifer Lopez, is already coming into the show with a reputation and persona. And so the show doesn't have to work so hard in establishing who J-Lo is as a person, because we feel like we already know her.
Die kenne ich nicht.
And perhaps more pertinently, If the musician celebrity judge is particularly beloved, they're just going to have stans and fans who adore them so much that those people are going to watch their favorite singer be a judge on that dying reality show. I don't know, that's probably what the TV executives thought of, at least. And obviously, I use J-Lo as an example, but this applies to every other celebrity judge on Idol. From Katy Perry, to Steven Tyler, to Nicki Minaj, Mariah Carey, etc., etc. It really does represent a shift from trying to find the next new star that America will fall in love with, to simply making entertaining television that people will watch. But anyway, that was all back in 2011. Do you know what else happened in 2011? A TV singing competition that debuted that also relied on celebrity star power for their judges/coaches. This is The Voice! Okay, so TV executives got the idea for yet another music singing talent show back when, you're never gonna believe this, back when Simon Cowell left American Idol. I told you! Simon is everywhere in this video. Even when he's not involved, his looming specter hovers around this entire truly cursed genre of television. The original pitch was to get celebrities, musician judges from different genres, to help mentor young singers. And then they found out about The Voice of Holland, and then they adapted that for the US. The contest makes a distinction between the celebrities no longer functioning as judges, but as coaches. Ooh. Do I have to explain the mechanics of The Voice to you? So the blind audition starts with the coach's backs are turned, and then the singer goes like la 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 la, and then if the coaches like what they hear, they press a button, and then it makes the chair go whoosh. And then if you have multiple coaches who want you on their side, they go, join my team, no, join my team. I'm so tired. I don't want to explain pop show mechanics anymore. Now you can probably tell from the name of the show, as well as just from the mechanics of the blind audition, that the show was trying to position itself as the we want to be all about the voice, man. We don't care about looks or the it factor. We just want real, actual talent. And I have to say, the vocalists they did get for The Voice are honestly, on average, better vocalists than a lot of the ones that they got for American Idol during its middling years. But that honestly might have more to do with the fact that The Voice would often get people with previous industry experience and career musicians to audition for their shows. But still though, the framing of, we're about the voice, man, we don't care about looks. I don't know, I find that packaging and framing kind of disingenuous. Because if you look at a show like American Idol from season 2 or 3 onward, they would have people, to put it completely bluntly, who many would not call conventionally attractive, but they still finished quite high in the competition because their voices and their talent was just that stellar. And looking at it another way, I've seen people on The Voice who straight up look like supermodels. Because at the end of the day, in every single one of these shows, it's still the producers off-screen who decide who gets to audition in front of the judges and who gets featured on television. And those producers off-screen probably have a bunch of criteria when choosing who gets to be on TV. Like, not only about how good you are, but maybe about how marketable you are, how unique, how interesting your backstory is. Who we see on TV is just the tippiest top of the iceberg when it comes to the thousands and thousands and thousands who go and audition for these kinds of shows. The Voice, in a lot of ways, does feel like the natural culmination of a lot of the themes and trends that we've seen in these TV talent shows in the 2000s. Like The X Factor, there is a lot of emphasis on contestant and judge/coach interaction. Their one-on-one interactions are a pretty significant part of the show. In fact, one of the notable things about The Voice is the amount of screen time given to these celebrity coaches, and interactions with each other, and interactions with the contestants, and even getting celebrity coaches to sing and perform on stage, on camera. So cool! If anything, the show probably does more to boost the visibility of these celebrity coaches than it does to boost the rep of its contestants. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that the first season had celebrity coach Adam Levine. That was aired in 2011. The same year, he and his band, Maroon 5, released one of the biggest hits of their career, Moves Like Jagger, featuring fellow The Voice coach Christina Aguilera. And this sparked a decade of Maroon 5 just being the worst mainstream artist band. So it's no wonder that it seems like all these A-list celebrities and musicians are tripping over themselves to be coaches in this godforsaken program. That, and they get paid tens of thousands of dollars to show up for a few hours and press a button. I'm joking. I'm joking. Calm down. The fact that these are such high-profile coaches too also helps with the overall positive and happy, fun vibe that these talent shows have been trying to cultivate through the years. If the people doling out advice and criticism are big stars who are acutely concerned with their own public image, they are going to play nice. Something that talent shows have also gotten criticized for. And of course, just like with Got Talent and all the others, you have the sob stories played for sympathy. The Voice was rife with this. Again, people started to take notice.
This is the backstory.
See? Our audience doesn't care about singing.
But it's a music show.
This is not a show for people who like music. This is a show for housewives who like to vote for things on their phone.
But The Voice is fascinating to me as a talent show that emerged during the social media attention economy era. See, the show has undergone what I would call the subway surferification of the TV talent show. Now you might be asking, Fred, why do you keep needlessly adding the word ification to random words like it means something? It's getting kind of old. And to that I say, no, you're getting kind of old! We all know the meme associated with Subway Surfers, right? That you can put any old gameplay footage to the side of the screen or whatever, and that would be enough to hold the hold the attention span of the iPad kids who are watching your video. Well, I think that a similar thing happens with these kinds of TV talent shows. Well, take a look at any performance from the early era of American Idol. The performance starts to sing, and then that's it. They sing and sing and sing, and then the audience, you're just expected to just sit there and watch. For like 1.5 minutes, the only thing you pay attention to is a contestant's performance. I'm bored already. Now, contrast that with what goes on in The Voice. The auditions specifically, which are honestly the most notable moments of the show. A performer whose singing voice you're not yet familiar with starts singing, and they may catch you off guard, like, wow, that's how they sound like? And not even like 10-20 seconds into the performance, the camera will cut to one of the coaches, a celebrity coach whose songs and persona that you already know, so you're thinking about that. And then it shows the celebrity pondering. Will they press the button? The celebrity may even look to other celebrities so that there's like that interaction going on. And then finally, the coach will click the button and then it makes the chair go whoosh. And then it feels like a resolution. But what about the other coaches? Will they click the button to make the chair go whoosh? And mind you, all of that is still happening while the performer is still singing. So you're simultaneously evaluating how good the performer is while all of this is just going on. And then after the performer is done, multiple coaches press the button, and then they have to decide, like, ooh, which one should I join? Do I join this team or that team? And the audition only ends after the contestant makes a choice about which coach they will align themselves with. If you watch a clip of The Voice through that lens, it is impossible to unsee. From the perspective of making entertaining TV, and more importantly, an entertaining YouTube video that people won't click away from, this is brilliant. Because, just like Subway Surfers, if you get bored of a vocal performance within like the first 5 seconds, you can just zone in on one of the other 5 plot lines simultaneously happening in the video. It's a quirky gimmick that quickly overwhelms viewers and feels kind of opposite to the textbook simplicity of those early Idol days. Now you might say, well, that's just the audition process though, right? That's just what, the first 3, 4, 5 episodes of the show? But even after the audition process, for the performances themselves, there is an overabundance of gimmicks, like battle rounds, knockout rounds, live cross battles, all of which I just stopped caring about, because like, I don't know any of these contestants, I don't care. And all this overabundance of gimmicks has just reached its apotheosis with the goddamn, say it with me now, The Masked Singer.
Who's behind the mask?
Look, I do a lot of research for these videos. At one point, I watched all the shows mentioned on here, but I had to draw a line with this particular show because even with clips of The Masked Singer, I could feel my brain smoothing out like a hard-boiled egg. Maybe I should be nicer to the show. I mean, it is an adaptation of a Korean show, but this US version, man. I think this is just what happens when you accidentally spill all your oops, all gimmicks. And I am appalled that I even have to include it in this video among the other talent competitions. You know, ones that have regular people as contestants. But I feel like I have to include The Masked Singer, because frankly, it's one of the more notable singing shows on TV right now because it's just so fucking weird. This is the absolute state of TV singing talent shows in the 2020s. Ninja was dressed as an ice cream cone all along, and Caitlyn Jenner is a horrible bird. Alright, I think now is about time to wrap things up, to come to some sort of conclusion. I mean, I've been yapping for what, 10, 15 minutes? Let me just look down at the runtime and oh my god! So now that we've been painstakingly going through the history of the talent show from 2000s onward, are we any closer to figuring out why these talent shows stopped being the cultural behemoths that they once were? Like I said in the beginning, you could easily wave this away as, well, streaming overtook television as the primary way for consuming media. And more generally, you could also point out the death of the monoculture. Back in the 2000s, we were basically all listening to the same music, TV, and movies, and now, thanks to the internet, not so much. But for talent shows specifically, I think that there's something deeper. I want to explore these themes, and to keep me on track, I'm going to be organizing my thoughts into an internet-friendly, numbered list. Number 1, less focus on contestants. The original conceit of Idol, which kickstarted the whole talent show mania in the first place, was that if the audience got to know the contestants and they supported them directly by texting or calling in, then the audience would be more likely to buy music from said contestants and make everybody more money! And you look at the way that Kelly Clarkson was treated all the way back in season 1. They interview her friends, discuss how she got into singing, and notably, do not hyperfixate on the worst tragedies of her life. They hone in on the most relatable and personable aspects of Kelly's personality, while still putting her singing performances front and center. Because, you know, this is a singing competition after all. Shocking, I know. But these contests nowadays give way more airtime to celebrity judges, coaches, whoever, and their interactions and quips and personality and all that. There's also a lot more focus on the gimmick. Again, we are on that Subway Surferification of this TV talent show format. And of course, a lot of focus given on the sob stories, which, yes, is related to the contestants, but the sob story angle treats them more as objects deserving of pity, rather than as relatable musicians and artists to be admired or whose records you ought to buy. The YouTuber Alpha Media has a really excellent video comparing early iterations of American Idol to The Voice, specifically why Idol produced a number of decently successful musicians while The Voice did not. He states what I feel is the core difference between the two shows in a very concise way.
The entire process and format of these two shows feels critical to their end goals. To me, The Voice is convoluted. It's overcomplicating things and trying to focus on too many specifics, while Idol's end goal was always, hey, let's make this person famous. Simple.
Number 2, because of the internet. A huge part of American Idol / The X Factor / The Voice's appeal is imagining that you were the one competing. Dreaming that you too could perform in front of Simon, Paula, and Randy, that you too could compete on that X Factor stage. And I get it. I see the vision. Being able to sing in front of potentially millions of people, to find yourself performing in front of higher-ups who could change the trajectory of your life. It's something that an average person would never get to experience in, like, the early to mid-2000s. But something happened in the late 2000s and 2010s, a development that allowed you to broadcast yourself, let's say.
We've got the afternoon. You've got this room for two.
Yeah, as a teen, I was a pretty active user on YouTube on its earliest years. And back then, I remember a lot of song covers and original music, and a lot of really talented people. And I'm sure it started as a sincere desire to express oneself artistically, and that's what motivated these people. But as the years went on, it became clear that doing music online was becoming a real potential pathway to stardom. And I have to say, contrasting with the experience of auditioning for Idol or The X Factor or The Voice, making videos of yourself singing in your house and randomly getting discovered that way is at least 98% less sweaty and less cumbersome than spending multiple days lining up at a stadium, all to sing for 15 seconds in front of a tired and disinterested producer. This trend of becoming a music star through online means started back when Soulja Boy basically memed his way to the top of the charts with Crank That Soulja Boy and set the blueprint for every TikTok song and artist to come afterward. Justin Bieber became the biggest male pop star of this century because the one person who could break him into the industry happened to randomly click on a video of his. Shawn Mendes got his start on Vine. Freaking Vine, like how? And to this day, you will still find former influencers and content creators from all kinds of platforms make some gestures into the mainstream music scene, with music sometimes good enough to cultivate a real cult fanbase who really enjoy their work. I think that there's something to be said too about this kind of fandom that social media creates. With interaction between fan and artist becoming more direct than ever, fans want to feel like it was their support and their encouragement that made an artist successful. Which was, to be fair, the case with these kinds of talent shows. In theory, fans vote for their favorite who then end up winning, right? Well, yeah, but with years of allegations and rumors of just how rigged that these shows are, fudging with vote totals, and eliminating contestants who the studios see fit, these shows started coming across more like, for lack of a better word, industry plant-like, which stands in stark contrast to how organic social media feels in comparison. But to me, the craziest thing about all this is how these talent shows have seemingly been looking to online platforms for potential contestants. Luke Taylor, who was already known as the deep voice bass guy on TikTok, and already had 2 million followers on the platform, auditioned for American Idol in 2022. YouTuber Maddie Jane, who already had viral online success back when she was 11 years old in 2010, and even appeared on Ellen, would, 14 years later, appear on The Voice. Perhaps this is a mutually beneficial agreement between the online star and the TV show. It feels like American Idol and The Voice are leeching off the online audience and fandom of existing personalities and hoping that some of that delicious clout rubs off on the shows. And I don't think that these shows would have to work so hard in recruiting contestants if... Number 3. Lack of success of winners. As early as 2008 or 2009, long after Kelly Clarkson's album Breakaway that was stacked with hits, long after Jennifer Hudson had won her Oscar for Dreamgirls, I was already hearing a lot of jokes and snarky remarks online about how many of the winners and first runner-ups of American Idol were not necessarily successful, or rather, never had the thriving pop star career that seemed to be promised by Idol. Look at Season 1's Justin Guarini, or Season 5's Taylor Hicks. I remember those observations being made over 17 years ago. Now, you no longer hear those kinds of jokes anymore because it's basically accepted that nobody from these shows ever get, mainstream big anymore. And with The Voice, you can't even pretend that they even have a semblance of cultural relevance the second after their season ends. The Voice has been notorious for producing basically next to no new huge stars. But The crazy thing is that there are still a handful of people who get famous relatively recently, who just happened to have participated in those shows. Benson Boone, probably the biggest new male pop star of the 2020s, voluntarily dropped out of Idol when he reached the top 24. Morgan Wallen, a shockingly successful country singer who has had a constant presence on the Billboard singles and album charts, was a contestant on The Voice, but did not even make it on the live shows. Todrick Hall, a gay, cult-famous, multi-hyphenate, a choreographer slash musician slash YouTuber slash RuPaul's Drag Race judge, also happened to compete on American Idol in 2009 and finished in 9th place. For every single one of these people, Todrick, Benson, and Morgan, their involvement in those TV shows feels more like step 2 in their 10-step ladder to stardom. Something that honestly feels more incidental, even inessential to their story, rather than the actual thing that made them famous. As proven by the fact that those 3 people are so many times more successful than any of the winners or finalists of their respective seasons, and none of them even finished in the top 8. As to why these winners don't see success, contestants often receive enormous exposure, at least initially, and significant label support. But multiple winners and finalists from American Idol and The X Factor have later described conflicts over creative control, disappointing levels of long-term support, and reported quickly being shelved and dropped. It feels like record labels are willing to give you a massive push, but also have massive expectations later on, and won't be afraid to let you go if those predictions aren't immediately met. But part of it might just also be the artists themselves leaving the industry altogether. It is not uncommon to go to a Wikipedia page of any TV talent show winner or contestant and find that they were only ever productive for 1 to 2 years after the show before completely dropping off the face of the earth. And I can kind of see how that would happen. In the span of a few short months, you go from a regular nobody with a normal job to being love-bombed by tens of thousands of fans cheering your name while dealing with the intense scrutiny and criticism that comes with being a public figure on the internet, and show producers and handlers breathing down your neck and monitoring your every move. It is a pressure cooker of an experience, only to come out the other side realizing that the fans, the people who showed you so much admiration at one point, had moved on to the next season's contestant, leaving you in the dust, making you feel like you went through all that turmoil with nothing to show for it. And on that joyful note, number 4, short form doesn't mean long career. We already touched on this earlier about how viral YouTube videos are directly antithetical to the week-by-week format of old-school TV. But I want to give a very specific example that kind of embodies a lot of the issues we've talked about thus far. This is Callum Scott, who made history when he auditioned for Britain's Got Talent and sang a slowed-down cover of the seminal pop masterpiece Dancing on My Own by Robin.
I'm in the corner watching you kiss her.
The performance ended up being so impressive, he gets the whole standing ovation, the golden buzzer, and everything, the whole 9 yards. It was a heartwarming moment. It became a gigantic hit on YouTube with 400 million views, surpassing Susan Boyle and Paul Potts. And to this day, I believe, being the most viewed clip from literally any of these talent shows. To put this into perspective, that video has more views than PewDiePie's most viewed video. And his acoustic emotional cover of Dancing on My Own was made into a single, and to this day remains the definitive version of the song among normies, and not the original by Robin. Some years back, that cover even reached 1 billion streams on Spotify. It was obviously a big achievement. And that was 10 years ago. How has Callum Scott fared since then? Look, I don't want to downplay the guy's success. The audition opened doors for him that allowed him to become a musician full-time, and I'm sure that he has some dedicated fans. But just looking at the numbers, and just looking at the British chart specifically, this person only has 1 top 10 hit besides Dancing on My Own. And after his first album, none of his other albums charted in the top 10 in the UK. Plus, I spend a lot of time in pop music discourse spaces. I am very in tune with a lot of pop musicians with the cult following, those bubbling under the mainstream. And even then, the only time I ever hear about Callum Scott is when discussing Dancing on My Own. And sometimes it's even viewed negatively because it now eclipsed the superior Robin version. Look, none of this is to say that Mr. Scott is a bad artist or that he's even unsuccessful. But for the high standards set by these talent shows about just how amazing it would be to be platformed on their show, for the gazillion views that clips of these shows get on YouTube over the back of your stories and your talents, it just doesn't deliver on the implicit promises, the dream that they market of long-lasting fame and superstardom. And finally, number 5. It's getting stale. It's just getting stale. This is the kind of expected endpoint with the way talent shows have been progressing. Like, we already know what's going to happen. A contestant will come out and will wow the audience, and the judges and coaches or whoever are going to say some nice and wonderful things about them, and then they're going to mentor them, and they'll be all close with each other. Wow, what a great Kodak moment. And then the season just ends. And all of that will be forgotten until the next batch of the next batch of contestants for the new season arrives. And if you know that this is just going to be the end result, you strip away all of that, and all you have left is a bunch of famous multimillionaires patting each other on the back, showing us how generous they are to give their time to help mentor these young, inexperienced poors. I want to go back to a quote about the original show that got this all started, Popstars. Popstars was a program with built-in cultural obsolescence. It was only ever going to sustain the act as long as it was on air. The whole concept was to follow the creation of something, to package and sell us the hopes, dreams, and hard work of a handful of young women on their way to the top. Pop success was, and is, the end of that equation, not the beginning. Once they achieved it, the game was over. It feels like in the earliest iterations of these shows, the objectives were twofold. To find the next big pop act that would help the big industrial entertainment complex earn a lot of money, and to make entertaining television/content. To make the big industrial entertainment complex earn a lot of money. And the earliest versions of these shows did seem to balance these two goals. But ultimately, it seemed like these institutions prioritized short-term gains instead of putting stock into adequate artist support. Can these talent shows ever get back on top? Like, have the same cultural omnipresence that something like American Idol once had? I mean, maybe? If you show the audience that everything that the contestants go through will actually amount to something in the end, and achieve the lofty or even semi-impressive promises that these shows hint at. On a much, much smaller scale, other talent competition type shows have found success by catering to a very specific niche audience, or by just leaning into the whole chaotic nature of everything and letting randos on the worldwide internet be their insane, weird selves. Now you might be thinking, come on, do you really think that this is going to be the next American Idol?
This girl is on fire! This girl is on fire!
Well, I mean, obviously, that's going to... Yes. Bye!